financial watchdog, the acting director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Russell Vought, has told workers to, quote, stand down from performing any work task. Big picture, there's currently no federal regulators safeguarding Americans' money from unfair banking practices. And right now, it's unclear when the agency's work will resume and if it will resume. Officials said Sunday that the headquarters here in Washington are closed this week. Joining us now is the former director of the CFPB, Rohit Chopra. He was removed from his post by President Trump earlier this month. Rohit, thank you so much for being with us. As you watch what the Trump administration is doing here, why do you think they're doing it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we need to protect people from some of the biggest powerful corporations in America. And over the past few years, we took action so they would forfeit billions of dollars from people that they cheated. Companies like Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, and more. And the truth is, people are really worried about high credit card interest rates, how they're going to pay their mortgage. We don't want to see their pocket picked. And by telling people the investigations are over, no more oversight, it just feels like a free pass to some of these big corporations to do whatever they please.
There are partisan differences historically, and CFPB is pretty new, but there are differences of what CFPB's role should be, opinions on the agency. Why is this different than just that?
Well, you know, I would say that there isn't so much partisan difference when you look at the actual work, medical bills, junk fees, protecting our personal data. It really enjoys broad support. The only place it's controversial is in Washington, and especially with the lobbyists representing Wall Street and these big companies. So, you know, here's what's different. This is in some ways a defund the police movement that they're pushing when it comes to big corporations. The CFPB is one of the only agencies that is overseeing these very large financial institutions, and increasingly, big tech giants are wanting to control the flow of money and payments, and they too have been potentially wanting to interfere with the agency's operations as well.
So as an example, let's talk about Elon Musk. He tweeted, RIP CFPB, complete with a tombstone emoji, before the Doge team took control of the CFPBX account, deleted it, before Russell Vought even took over at the Bureau. What are his conflicts specifically here? How could he personally profit from this?
Well, a lot of people are talking about how some of these big tech CEOs and others, if they have the ability to spy and snoop on other competitors' trade secrets, to know new products that are coming out, if they're looking to gather more and more data on us, that could really pose a big conflict. A lot of these tech companies, Facebook wanted to create its own currency. Google actually sued the CFPB to stop us from looking at their Google Pay business. So there clearly is a lot at stake here, and these big tech companies seem to not want the CFPB to be looking under the hood.
As you see this, is this legal, the way they're doing this?
I don't really know what is going on over there, and I don't understand what is motivating it. The CFPB is one of those agencies that is doing exactly what people want. It was formed to help stop a repeat of the mortgage crisis that we saw in 2008. So I hope that people will see this is an agency that is really about serving people without a political agenda. We
were talking about some of the real-life examples of work that the CFPB does that affects people, whether it's junk fees. We were talking about this in the break beforehand. When it comes to military families or veterans, you've targeted pawn lenders, auto lenders with predatory practices, those looking for personal data that they should not be getting. Talk about some of the real-world implications for just general consumers out there for this.
Well, we saw how there were active duty military families and so many others who lost their home to an illegal foreclosure. There's been companies that have illegally repossessed service members' cars while they were at basic training. So we're really proud of all the work to prosecute those crimes, and what's really worrisome is more and more companies want to feast on the data about all of us. We know that foreign adversaries of ours are trying to mine data about military families and those involved in intelligence services. The CFPB has been aggressive on trying to make sure that data brokers and other companies who assemble data about us, that there's some accountability, and they need that accountability and oversight. Otherwise, it's open season on our most sensitive data.
Rohit, Chopra, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Boris?